The women that will be speaking to us today are all experts in their field. Some of them we can proudly claim as our own, as Mount Alvernia past pupils, which is exciting. But all of them have generously given over their time to come and speak as either keynote speakers or industry panellists. So it really is a huge commitment on their part, and I know that we will give due respect to that. In essence, our guests today are sharing with you their personal journeys in their chosen work paths, their passion and the steps that they've taken to make what was once their own aspirations into a reality. And that's the process that I know we are working through at the moment as Year 10 and as Year 12 students. I think today also is a really perfect expression of women moving women forward. Okay, and I don't think we can have a day like today without really acknowledging that, because we know that not yet, it really is not an even playing field when it comes to the work of men and women in the workplace. We know that. We don't need to sort of unpack that today, but we will take that as noted, that this is really about seeing other women who are experts in their field and being able to effectively, for a day, be your mentors. So really, take heed of that. It's a really, really important component, I think, of today. Because as women, we really are, and we need to be, each other's greatest advocates. So it really just starts with a seed of an idea, and I think that's what you're going to get today. You're going to get seeds of ideas and possibilities. These generous speakers are here to help light the fire within you. And you will know that we've already spoken this year in many different forums around the idea of hard work, small gains or improvements, and how that has a big impact. Lots of little improvements impact on our work here as students of the college in our academics to open up and maximise possibilities and opportunities. So today is your day to dream about what will drive you forward and what you might aspire towards as you continue to do your personal best here in your work, your current workplace, which is here at this college. I really encourage you to listen attentively today, which I know you will, and I've already sort of laboured that at the beginning, to be curious, to be open to the possibilities, and to consider the opportunities, to ask the important questions. And please don't be afraid of asking questions. That's a sign of a very, very good learner, to ask questions. Carry with you today a really healthy sense of self-belief. I don't want anyone here today, when we're listening to our speakers, think that that might not be possible for them. Okay? You really have to have a very healthy self-belief when you're hearing from these wonderful people that have come to speak with us. So really think big and think beyond. Think big and think beyond. So prior to really kicking off this morning, I do need to thank, and I know you would share in this thanks with me, the sensational work of our careers team and our Futures Hub, namely the same people, but thank you very much. The work that has been put into curating today and organising the speakers has been huge. I know that you will appreciate that, and it really is a truly, truly wonderful opportunity that you're being given today, girls. I know that you will appreciate it. So in final, I want you to think about this. Who you are tomorrow begins with what you do today, or perhaps who you encounter today. Okay, so think about who you encounter today and how that might translate to your future tomorrow. That's what today is really about. Girls, I know that you'll have a wonderful day and you really will take everything out of this experience. Enjoy it. I'll be here with you because I want to enjoy it as well. I'm now going to pass over to Miss Loveday.
Good morning. So I just thought before I introduce our incredible keynote speakers for this morning that I would give you a very, very quick overview of why career education is important. I suppose, and in particular for our Year 10s leading into set planning, the subject and pathway decisions that you make at school have a huge impact on how you live for the rest of your life. It affects not just your further education and study, training or employment, but it will also affect your social life, your financial security and health outcomes later in life. Students are more engaged in school and highly motivated about their future when they have a clear understanding of what they're working towards after graduation. So to give you a quick snapshot, currently, many of you might already be aware that private schools tend to have careers counsellors as a standalone role. State schools to date do not. BCE schools, so Brisbane Catholic Education Schools, do not. So you're in a very privileged position that here at the school you have a careers team dedicated to answering your questions and providing you with that specialised support. I can tell you last year I had students from Craigsley and Wavell come to me for help with QTAC who it hadn't even been raised with them for the entirety of Year 12 because they just simply don't have that person on staff. So you are very, very fortunate. To give you an idea, each of you here in this room will work on average 10 to 15 jobs, maybe even more, for the duration of your working life. And as was mentioned to us at UQ yesterday from one of the ambassadors, your retirement age is likely to be 70, which means for you, post-school, that's 50 years of work ahead of you. That's a long time. Mr Donoghue can attest to that. So, why is it important to be happy in your job? Let's think about this. That's a very long time at work. You will spend on average 99,100 hours at work. So you want to like the people you're with. If you don't enjoy your work, you can feel miserable and you can feel stuck in a rut. A job that you enjoy keeps you healthy. It affects your physical and your mental health. If you're unhappy and you're constantly stressed out, your state of mind and your health will deteriorate. Being in a job you love can keep your stress levels low and can fend off conditions like depression and anxiety. Good jobs also strengthen relationships, and I refer to both in the romantic sense, family and friendship. If you're not passionate about what you do, you run the risk of bringing people around you down. And we know we have people here that hate school, for example, and they might be particularly negative, how much that can bring a circle of people down. Work-related stress is one of the main factors that causes tension in relationships at home, with resentment, complaints, bitching and bad moods often being the reason for divorce, breakups and fights. In fact, in Australia, it's listed as the third highest reason for divorce. But moving on, liking what you do and having a job that you enjoy gives you purpose. Feeling as though you're spending your time doing something valuable and worthwhile can help to boost your drive and your self-confidence. And let's be honest, it is important. It gives you financial security. With financial security, you can pay the bills and you're not living paycheck to paycheck. One day, you might aspire to own your own home. You might want to travel extensively when you can, drive a better car than your current P-plater, and afford the lifestyle that you aspire to. Yesterday at UQ, the Year 10s were privileged to learn about the top growth industries for the next 2 decades. And just to give the Year 12s a little bit of insight, leading the way in the top position was health and social assistance. This was followed by professional, science and technical services, and education and training was in 3rd place. In period 6 today with the 10s, we'll talk about that in more depth, and Year 12s, you'll get your own session in a few weeks about that. The top tertiary qualified jobs in 2025 were as follows, and I just thought you would find this interesting as a little tidbit of information. In number 1, which is fantastic for our college, given how many of you are interested in health, was registered nurses, followed by sales managers, software programmers, accountants, school teachers, both primary and secondary, administrators and surveyors. These were top growth areas. And so, girls, today it is my hope for you that by the end of the day, you will have had the opportunity to think about your own interests, your own strengths, and in particular, your aspirations. I am so incredibly excited with the calibre of women that we have somehow pulled together today. A few Instagram messages worked a treat, honestly. I am truly excited. We've done this at other schools before and had not even half the same success rate. I blame COVID, so thank you. I'm going to now take a minute to introduce our first guest speaker. And it is just such a huge honour. Very excited. Okay, so without further ado, born and bred in Brisbane, Kim Hansen graduated in medicine with first-class honours from the University of Queensland in 1998. Kim trained in multiple hospitals across Queensland, Victoria and England to achieve her specialty qualification in emergency medicine in 2008. In 2011, Kim returned to Brisbane, where she now works as Director of St Andrew's War Memorial Hospital Emergency Department, as well as being an emergency consultant at the Prince Charles Hospital. Kim completed an MBA from Deakin Uni in 2018 and was awarded the Vice-Chancellor's Award for the Best Academic Performance in the faculty. Kim is Chair of the Board of the Emergency Medicine Foundation, a not-for-profit organisation supporting research into emergency care. She is Queensland Faculty Chair for the ACEM, the Australasian College for Emergency Medicine, and holds other leadership roles with them, including the inaugural chair of the Advancing Women in Emergency group. In 2019, Kim was co-author of a paper on scribes that won the John Gilroy Potts Award for the most significant emergency medicine research paper published by ACEM Fellows. In 2020, Kim was on the ACEM COVID Guidelines Writing Committee and the federally funded COVID National Guideline Committee, as well as playing a key role in both her hospitals. On top of this, Kim is also married with 3 school-age children and enjoys playing basketball and netball outside work. So I think you would agree with me, she hasn't done very much. It's a bit disappointing, to be frank. All right, can we put our hands together and please welcome Kim.
Good morning, girls. It's a real privilege and honour to be here, and I haven't been asked to talk at a careers event before, and certainly not one at my own high school, so I'm really pleased to be here. I should point out that I am a good doctor. I'm not a great public speaker. It's really not part of the role, so please forgive me that I'm not quite as fluent as your headmistress and your teachers. So when I was your age, younger high school, that is, if you'd asked me what I wanted to be, I would have said I wanted to win Wimbledon. And it didn't work out for me. But anyway, really, when I was much younger, I wanted to be a hairdresser, which was quite ironic because I could barely plait my own hair. And the tennis thing, I love playing sport. I love playing tennis and basketball. But again, I really wasn't that great. I was in my school team, but I didn't really progress much past that. I once made it to the Met North trials. But over time, I guess I did well at school, and so medicine came into the options. I'm fortunate to have family members who've done medicine as well. And so then by the end of Year 12, I had selected medicine and got the results to get in. So if I go back to the start, like Miss Loveday said, I grew up in McDowell, so nearby. I went to the local state primary school for 7 years. I grew up in a stable household with mum, dad and younger brother. I went to a nearby local private girls' high school, which I enjoyed, but I must say that that wasn't my favourite phase of life. My children asked me, what is the happiest time? And I would say the happiest time is now. I think, you know, we have a lot more freedom as adults than you have as children. So, you know, keep going, essentially. But through high school, I did a lot of sport and I did well at my studies. And at the end of Year 12, I applied first for medicine. I had also considered other things like engineering and actuarial studies, but I think the working with people, helping people when they really need it, really appealed to me. And so I went into medicine at the University of Queensland. At that time, it was an undergraduate degree, but now there is a lot more options for you. And I know a number of you will be considering medicine and other health-related fields. And I would say, definitely apply for as many different degrees as you can. Medicine's a little harder now to, I think, get into. But almost the hardest thing about it is actually getting the spot in the medical school, really. A number of you will become doctors or other health professionals. So from there, it was 6 years of medical school, and that was, it was both enjoyable and challenging at times. I was fortunate enough to attend a residential college, Emmanuel College, so lived in on campus, which was really great fun. It was kind of like boarding school without rules, so awesome. And at the end of that, the good thing about medical school is once you're in, most people pass, and so the vast majority of people will graduate with a medical degree, and once you graduate with a medical degree as an Australian, you will be offered a job. So one advantage of medicine is job security, and once you get that first job as an intern, so I did mine at Gold Coast Hospital, and once you get that first job, even though they're 12-month contracts, the reality is that there will be other job opportunities in your own hospital or other hospitals available to you as junior doctors. So I can tell you now, if you had a medical degree and you're a junior doctor, you could get a job in any emergency department in Brisbane. In fact, probably all over the countryside, because we are short of junior doctors in emergency medicine. So I did my intern year, and then I did my second junior doctor year in Rockhampton, and that involved working in very interesting places like Mount Morgan, which had the highest unemployment rate in Australia, and Warrabinda, which was at that time quite a violent Aboriginal community, an ex-mission, if you like. So those people had a lot of problems, which was really thrust upon them from generations of trauma. From there, another advantage of medicine is that we're able to travel. So I was able to travel, first of all, to South America, and I did 3 months of volunteer work there in Chile, and then 3 months of backpacking because I was there, really, and because I was free. And then went across to England and worked there for a couple of years. Then I came back to Australia and had decided to specialise in emergency medicine. I liked emergency medicine because it's teamwork. We work very closely with our nurses and other allied health professionals. There's always a team of doctors on shift. We help people when they need it most. We see a lot of variety, so we treat everyone from newborns to people who are over 100, everything from major trauma, so car accidents, heart attacks, life and death stuff, to sprained ankles and a lot of COVID swabs over the last year. And it is very rewarding work. So there's a lot of different options within medicine in terms of specialties. Everything from very technological specialties like radiology, where you don't really do a lot with people or the general public, to general practice, and I'm sure you've all attended one of those, to surgery, paediatrics, all sorts of options. But I finished my training and started work as a specialist, a consultant, first in Melbourne, and at the same time had my first child. And really, once I'd done my specialty training, which involved more exams because, unfortunately when you finish year 12, the exams don't stop. It's really lifelong learning, whatever career path you choose. I decided that I would start to, put my hand up for other things. So the first thing, you've just heard a list of the things I do, but you have to start somewhere, and an opportunity came about in the Emergency Medicine College for committee positions. And so I thought, I'll just apply. And I was lucky enough to get into 2 committees on that first year. And really from then, how my CV or career has evolved is simply by really just turning up, putting my hand up when positions come, when projects come, doing the project, doing it well, and then the next opportunity evolves. And it's just become like that, essentially. So the opportunities from the committees turned into an opportunity to be on the Emergency Medicine Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organisation funding emergency medicine research in Queensland. And soon after I turned up, the chair tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, something's happening in my life and I'm going to move over to Perth and I'd really like you to be chair. And I was no one else put up their hand, which is really how you get a lot of positions, especially not-for-profit positions. And so then I'm chair of a board of a not-for-profit. Similarly, I guess with the Advancing Women in Emergency group, it came about after I noticed that we had on our ASIM board, it was 100% male. So there was 10 males and no females. And we're a reasonably equal specialty, 40% females, and we were frankly all a little horrified. And we thought, well, what's going on here? So 2 of us decided to create a women's group, and within a couple of days we had 200 members. So if I look at, I guess that's how I've got to where I am now. If I look at what I wish I'd known, I really love the phrase "perfect is the enemy of good," which is attributed to Voltaire, but other people have said something similar, including Aristotle and Confucius. It's really better, I believe, to get something done and to be a part of something rather than have it done perfectly, to really or not do it at all. And I wish in a way that I had sometimes enjoyed the journey a little bit more. I'm reasonably driven and I'm a high achiever, and at times I wished I'd kind of lightened up a bit and enjoyed the phase that I was in, enjoyed the ride, because really it's all about the journey, not the destination. I would say, whatever happens, keep trying to get what you want. When I was in year 10, I wasn't getting straight A's, for example. And some of my colleagues who've ended up in medicine were not the top academic kids at their school. But they've persisted. So for me, I was fortunate enough that maths was my favourite subject and I was good at maths. And so by year 11, year 12, I chose all the maths and science-related subjects other than French and English. And so then I was able to get good marks in them to improve. And same with my colleagues who haven't gone through the undergraduate medical degree. They didn't get the ATAR 99 or the OP1 or the T-score 990. Perhaps they've done science or nursing or really anything, and they've persisted and they've worked hard and they've gone through the GAMSAT and they've eventually got there. And it really isn't a race. It's not a who's the youngest doctor or who's the youngest specialist, because that's not what's important. Most of us become specialists between the age of 30 and 40. And as Ms Jensen said, Ms Loveday said, we then have 30 years, say maybe 40 years of working in that job. So it really is not a race. One great thing about medicine is the job security. So it's very hard to lose your job as a doctor. Another good thing is the pay. The highest average earners in this country are doctors, although there's a big spread of earnings depending what specialty you're in, whether you're public and private, and of course how hard you work, how many patients you see, how many hours you do. And that allows us to be able to mix in things that we enjoy. So for me, I can do sport. Normally I can travel to lots of interesting and exotic places, and this last 6 months that's all within Australia, but in the past, through medicine, I've been able to travel and work to Chile and England, and it's a very transportable qualification. So I could work in New Zealand tomorrow if I wanted to. I could work in England, and one of my colleagues who is English, has just flown back to be able to work in England. Another really important thing that I wish I'd known earlier, and maybe it's something you don't know till you're older, but really know for yourself what makes you happy. What do you really enjoy? Do you really enjoy working with other people, or do you actually enjoy getting things done by yourself? Do you enjoy working outside and being physically active, for example? So in emergency medicine, we don't really sit down. We're walking around, we're in and out of rooms, we might sit and write some notes and then we're up again. Whereas other specialties, they sit down on a chair in an office all day, and I didn't want that. And also, what makes you happy in your time off? How do you relax? And one way I had that put to me recently was, what did I enjoy when I was 8? And it's really the same kind of thing. I liked netball when I was 8. I liked playing sport. I liked being outside. But maybe for you that's music, painting, reading, whatever it is. You know, just never lose that grip of what you enjoy. If we look at the low lights, I'll start with the low lights rather than the highlights. Look at the low lights of this career. I think obviously the study is hard at times. There is a period that we go through where we're working full-time, and in emergency medicine that's shift work. We tend to do 4 10-hour shifts a week. Other specialties are different and have longer hours. But shift work means night duty was very frequent. Every 2 to 3 weeks we would do a run of nights. So that would be working, for example, from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m, and it's pretty tiring. Late shifts are common, weekend shifts are very common. So for a long time I worked every second weekend, both days, which really does affect your social life. But studying while you're working full-time and having that pressure to pass an exam was really quite hard. But the one good thing, I guess, is that that has all passed now, and you can stop at your specialty training, but I've gone on and done further qualifications, so I've just gone through that again, where I had exams on top of work. I think the shift work is tough, it's physically tiring, it can be emotionally draining, but ultimately that is our specialty. That is what we signed up for. Some specialties don't have so much shift work. So if you look at general practice, for example, pathology, radiology, but a lot will have on-call, certainly the surgical subspecialties, paediatrics, obstetrics, they're going to get called out in the middle of the night. And there's probably not a lot of professions that still have that. You know, there's not lawyers being called out in the middle of the night, although I know they do long hours into the evening. So with that work, I've had to say no to trips away, I miss sporting events, I miss social events, I've turned up to friends' weddings on 2 hours sleep because I've worked the night duty. There's certainly been tough times, I guess. And another low light, I think, as Ms Jensen mentioned, was gender inequity. So when I was your age, we were told girls can do anything, you're equal to the boys, and it really wasn't brought up as an issue. And so it was quite a rude shock to me to discover that there was gender inequity. And that comes through in various forms, often subtle. It tended to start once, I guess, you enter the phases of life that only females can do, so pregnancy, childbearing, breastfeeding, but it doesn't necessarily have to be related to that. And I think the more that we're aware of it, the more we call it out, the more we support each other, the better. So for me, it was much more subtle things. It was, a job, an opportunity would come up and I was told, oh, you should focus on the baby. Or an opportunity would come up at work and it would go to a man and I would be told, oh, but you're busy with the children. I think, well, hang on, I'm working full time. I'm the same as this guy. He's got more children than me. How come I'm discriminated against? But in the back of their minds, and it is subconscious, they're thinking, oh, she's got the children to look after. Well, yeah, I've got children, but I have a partner and I have a nanny. So I've made arrangements to do my work as well as the next person, despite the fact that I have children. So I'm really, really glad to hear that you're being told about it, that you're talking about it and you're aware of it, because I really feel that your generation and the girls who are in the generation above you are so proactive, so aware and so resourceful. So let's get on to highlights. Medicine is incredibly rewarding. We literally do save lives. It's actually pretty exciting. And I do love my work. It does make me happy to go to work. We have the opportunity to travel, so I'm able to work interstate. I've worked in Melbourne, I've worked in Brisbane. I could work tomorrow. I could get a job almost anywhere tomorrow if I wanted to move to Cairns, London, wherever, which is really exciting. We're able to go to conferences in lovely places. I've been to Seoul in Korea, Mexico City, Cape Town, London, Queenstown. I've even been to a conference in a ski resort in Japan, which was quite something. Other highlights, I guess, for me, very much having children has been a highlight. But I would say only have children if you really want children, because I heard a study that they don't add to your happiness. They're actually very stressful, would you believe? My children are quite shocked that I would be invited to talk to you. I have 2 high school girls. But that's just, that's just the way it is, and probably more so at your age group. But if you do want children, don't leave it too late. A bit of free medical advice, as fertility does drop off after the age of 35, and after 40 it can be quite difficult to conceive. And another, just a bit of life advice is choose your life partner or partners really wisely. You want this person to be your biggest fan, your biggest support. You want them to support your career. And please do not marry or partner up with the first person who is nice to you or makes you feel good, because you have more value than that. In terms of your mindset going forward, and I think Ms. Jensen said that, I want you all to know that you have value as an individual. Okay, you all have your strengths and weaknesses, and at your best, you are an incredible asset to your workplace when you get there. I've worked with a load of different people that have different personalities, different strengths, but when they shine, they are just amazing. So be confident in who you are. Know that you have that value. Show up, turn up to meetings, turn up to work, be on time, dress well, respect yourself. Be positive. I get to interview doctors now at St Andrews who come for jobs. And what I want is, I don't necessarily want the person who got the top marks at school or university. I actually don't want that person. I don't necessarily want the prize winner. What I want is people who can get along with other people, who are professional, they turn up on time, they work hard, they're polite to everybody, patients, nurses, visitors, other doctors. I want them to be able to resolve any difficulties that arise. Maybe there's an angry patient because they didn't get the result on time. I want them to be able to respectfully and politely resolve that problem. So a little bit of common sense goes a very long way. It's really what we call the soft skills now. And it's something we weren't taught in the 80s and 90s, but it is something I think that you've been taught right now. So what is most important? For you to be at your best, for you to really be that valuable person to the workplace, I think it's really important to have good self-care, so to look after yourself. And that's a lot of the basics, really. So colleagues of mine who fall off a cliff, if you like, they behave badly, they drop out of work, they drop out of different opportunities, it's because they haven't looked after themselves. And so those basics are things that your parents would have been telling you, and probably your teachers. It's getting enough sleep, it's eating well, it's having some space in your life for the things that you love, and it's having connections with those around you, positive connections. So that's with your family and that's with your friends. And very much surrounding yourself with people who like you and love you and support you. Things that to be wary of is, I see my colleagues, they either work themselves into the ground, so they just work too much and they don't allow for that space to look after themselves, or they pick up some bad habits, so they literally drink themselves into the ground, for example, or other bad habits that affect their health. So in closing, you're all different, you all have different personalities, you have different strengths, and whatever you do, you are a huge asset. After school, the opportunities are going to broaden out and you'll be able to find your space. Maybe at this school you can't get into the netball team you want to, you're not the debating captain, you can't get into committee, but once you finish school there's just so many opportunities. There's a netball team for you, there's a workplace for you, there's environment committee, whatever you want to do, it will be there. So use that community, use your connections, and you can shape your life into what you want it to be. If you want it to be lots of sport, it can be lots of sport. If you want it to be lots of study, lots of travel, you can do that. But especially, like Miss Loveday said, is once you get that job, that will enable you to do all your other things that you love. I think the qualities that have really helped me have been perseverance, optimism, and inclusiveness. So I'll just finish with my favourite quote: perfect is the enemy of good. Be good, do good things, and choose to be good to yourself. Thank you.
It's me again. All right. Thank you so much, Kim. That was really incredible. We're going to have the opportunity to ask him some questions at the end, so have a think if there's something that you're dying to know. All right. That's convenient because she's a doctor. All right. Okay. So, moving on. Our next keynote speaker is Chanelle Simpson. Chanelle Simpson is a specialist staff... Oh, God. Start that again. Chanelle Simpson is a senior staff specialist emergency physician at the Gold Coast University Hospital. Growing up and attending school in the northern suburbs of Brisbane, she graduated from medicine at the University of Queensland with honours in 1998. She then commenced her training in emergency medicine at the Gold Coast Hospital and several others in the southeast, most enjoyably spending her time in paediatric intensive care and retrieval medicine at the now Queensland Children's Hospital. Chanelle gained her fellowship in emergency medicine in 2008 and permanently joined the specialist staff at her second home at the Gold Coast Hospital. Chanelle has also worked in private emergency medicine, however realised her true love is in public emergency with the high caseload and diverse social and economic population that attends public hospitals in their time of need. These days, she precariously juggles a high-demanding and often exhausting job with organising her husband, 3 school-aged children and a 45-kilo dog. As this is her 20th year working at the Gold Coast, it will also, Year 12s, be her 20th schoolies. And that's to say she's pretty much seen it all. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. It's an honour to be invited to speak here today alongside my friend Kim and some other extraordinary women. On reading their bios, I'm thinking that I should actually stay for the afternoon to learn some other pieces of advice myself. When Miss Loveday asked us to speak around the topic of what I would tell my younger self, I admit that I really had to self-reflect and in some cases make the advice G-rated and appropriate for this forum. It has been nearly 29 years since I graduated Year 12 at St Rita's. I dare to say there are some staff at this college who weren't even born when I finished Year 12. I've learnt a lot of lessons. Sometimes I repeatedly made the same mistake and not learnt the lesson. With others, there was a quick aha moment. And sometimes it's only been with hindsight, like preparing this talk, that the lesson has become apparent. So forgive me if I warble a little bit, might even shed a tear like I did writing this speech. But here goes. So I thought I'd loosely break my lessons up into life stages, with some practical advice I wish I'd known at the time, and some general life advice that you've probably all heard before. So school. When I look back, school really was the greatest years of my life. I had a great school, great teachers, great friends, a good social life. My parents were fantastic. But it became so stressful as I had put an incredible amount of pressure on myself. And there was the general expectation that Chanelle would get an OP1. Well, at least I felt like there was. Even my mates from Nudgee would say that. We were the first year of OPs and there was a lot of nerves, I imagine like last year with ATAR. But the perceived and real pressure all came from within me, certainly not from my amazing parents. I felt burdened by the general expectations and chatter that that's just what would happen. It seemed to me like I would be an enormous, embarrassing failure if I didn't get that magic number 1. So firstly, and I can hear the cringes now, but maintain your relationships with your teachers and parents. Admittedly, I was particularly good at listening to my teachers, but I was a nightmare on the home front in Year 11. The epitome of street angel, house devil. I was so terrible to my mother to the point that when I was pregnant myself, I was actually terrified that I would have a daughter myself and that history would repeat itself. In hindsight, I had put myself under so much pressure that I was just a gasket waiting to blow every night at home after holding it all together at school. I'll never forget the day the school guidance counsellor came and took me out of class to have a talk about how things were at home. My mother had called her. I was horrified, embarrassed, and beyond furious. I didn't speak to my parents for weeks. Hell hath no fury, like a 16-year-old girl scorned. Today I realise that they just simply didn't know what to do. They were trying their best but needed help. And I think I've only really understood this now that I'm a parent of 3 kids. So however you are feeling, keep those lines of communication to your parents or other significant adult open. Don't shut them off, even if it's writing a letter or in a diary to them. You need adults because no matter what you think, you aren't actually an adult yet. And in fact, adulting is something that I'm not sure even I, at 46, know how to do properly sometimes. I think you should aim to have 4 or 5 trusted people that you know that you can always go to with worries or to talk. It might be your mum, your cousin, your boss, your sporting coach, it doesn't really matter who, but make it a priority to make that list and maybe even let them know that they're on it. Secondly, learn to study efficiently. In hindsight, I was an absolute shocker at this. I may have done very well at school, but I'm certain that I could have studied half to 2/3 as much and got the same results. I basically rewrote every text that I'd used at high school, then again for 6 years at medicine, and again for 5 years of specialty training. Then I'd make notes of the notes and notes of the notes of the notes. It was ridiculous and a waste of time. So this is where your teachers come in. I'm sure you've got a class similar to formation like my sons have, or year sessions that discuss how to study. Things like mind maps, mind dumping, writing your own questions, which to be honest I'm quite dubious about seeing what my sons do, setting time limits, mentally rehearsing scenarios. Use these ideas. Revise from week 1. Don't let the content get away from you. Even if you just look over that week's notes for 20 minutes for your most challenging subject. Plan your study, focus, and put the phone away where it won't tempt you. No one needs their phone to study. If you want to time yourself, buy a stopwatch. Be incredibly strict with yourself. You will get more done in a shorter period of time and then have more time for sport, social life, a part-time job. This is equally important whether you're an ATAR student, doing a TAFE course, on an apprenticeship, or whatever career path you choose to follow. And it will stand you in great stead for whatever workplace or entrepreneurial scenario you'll go into. I heard a clever teacher say recently to senior students, in ATAR years there are 3 S's, school, sport and a social life. You only have time for 2 of these. And you can only do 1 of these really well, and you can have the other one as a release and relaxation. So obviously, school is the one that you should do well at in your effort, and having a hobby or co-curricular activity should be the second. That is not to say that you can't have a social life. I had a pretty good one. but you need a lot of self-control to manage and prioritise your social life. Go to the movies once a week, have brekkie with a friend, not a party every Saturday night that wipes you out for Sunday. Find a way to phrase the reply that you are comfortable with when you are asked out and can't or don't want to go, and practice saying it out loud. This is particularly useful if you are worried what your friends will think or say. To be honest, they should be doing the same thing and might actually be quite impressed and learn something. Don't be swayed by them. Find your lane and stick to it. It's a short period of time in your entire life to make these sacrifices. It will go so fast. And at the age of 30, will you really look back and think, that party on the 24th of April in Year 12, 2021 in McDowell was awesome? I doubt it. My dad, who did not even finish high school, has always said to us, it doesn't matter what mark you get. Sorry, now I'm going to cry. As long as you can say to yourself that you tried your absolute hardest. Sorry. You can tackle problems and get help, but you can't take away the feeling of regret of not doing well when you know you could have tried better. And finally, by managing your study effectively, you can have a balanced life. I would encourage you to maintain exercise or keep going in sport. Keep playing your instrument. As Kim said, eat well and develop good sleep habits. Don't get out of bed at 1 p.m. every Sunday. If you learn from my mistake and study way more efficiently than I did, you can do all these things, play a sport, etc. Be healthier and probably do better. But it takes discipline. So most of this practical advice from school carries over to university with a few tweaks. And I think the same applies no matter what path you're going on. Again, learn to study properly, see above. There's so much more information to absorb, though, in postgraduate education and workplaces, so you can't learn everything. Learn to pick out the important bits. Do not rewrite 8 medical textbooks each semester into foolscap folders like I did. Get involved in university life. Join a club, a sporting team, and make an effort to socialise with new friends. Don't just stick to your old school crew. Get a part-time job. Most people will have time. Some students will have few contact hours and way more time than they could ever have imagined. So use this to get financially savvy. One of my big lessons was that I never did or never knew any better about money, and I blame this on my parents. They were very hard-working but weren't financially savvy. I wish I had been told to save some and some ideas of what to do with it. The bar at Toowong's RE pub on a Thursday night was not an ideal saving strategy. Buy the Barefoot Investor book. It's a simple book about finance and savings, and it's great for non-financial people like me. And finally, don't worry if you start a course and you don't like it. You can change. It may seem daunting and you may feel like you have disappointed people, but don't waste your time doing something that doesn't feel right. Follow your gut. Saying that, give it more than a week. There is always a cut-off date to change courses further down the track, so use that time objectively. I think the days of deciding what you want to do at school and then doing that for the next 50 years are well and truly over. And even in a course like dentistry or medicine, where it seems you may be stuck in a particular career, you're not. You can pivot in those jobs, branch out, specialise in a particular area. Much to the shock of many, some people actually left our medical degree at uni. Looking back, it was brave and they trusted themselves. Leaving a uni course, even a highly esteemed one, can be done. In my early career, and I can't emphasise again, and I sound like a broken record, but learn to manage your finances, well better than me. When you start your career is usually when you have no dependents, don't have a mortgage, your bills are pretty small. So save money. Start on your deposit for a house. Learn about your super. Put $10 away a week. That's 2 coffees. I'm no financial expert, but I do know as a junior doctor in the country, I was working my absolute butt off, but I was also making a lot of money compared to my friends in the city. However, I really didn't save any of it. I travelled a lot, which was a fantastic use of it, but I also drank a lot of nice wine, bought a lot of nice clothes, which ultimately just sat in the cupboard, and generally spent whatever went into my account. And again, I'll cautiously blame my parents for this advice, or lack of. So now that I'm older, there are some general life lessons, maybe not pearls, but at least some advice I'd like to pass on. And I think I'll always be learning and pondering these. There's a quote that usually refers to working women that says, "You can have it all, just not all at once," meaning work, family, etc. Well, I disagree. I think you can have it all at once, but you need to be realistic and realise you can't do everything at 100% perfection all the time. Something must give. You lean in, then lean out of all different aspects of your life, as Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, says. One week or weeks, it will be work that suffers. Other weeks, home will be a mess, but work will be skyrocketing. For instance, my laundry is my haven. I wash, iron and put away 3 or 4 times a week, and I try to do it all in the same day to give me the joy of a clean laundry just for a few hours. This week, however, I worked all last weekend. I spent a night on call. We've had a terrible week at work on the Gold Coast, and I've had the kids at home on a pupil-free day. Consequently, my laundry is a disaster, and it's giving me anxiety every time I walk past it. But work went okay, everyone's fine, and my kids are alive and fed. As a working woman, part or full-time, and even as a homemaker with different plates spinning, it's impossible to do it all well at once. I was drowning with the juggle a few years back when Jack, Harry and Grace were smaller. My husband travels a lot for work. We were trying to find a babysitter. I was sinking fast. I was talking, complaining, crying, I cry a lot, to my colleague who does our roster about it. I said, "I feel like I'm only doing a 75% job at work and a 75% job at home." He responded, "Well, together, that's 150%. So I think you're doing okay with so much on." I've never forgotten it. A young, male, single doctor had the insight to see what I couldn't. Secondly, about career paths as you move on. I heard an interesting concept this week which really resonated with me. My generation was taught the expectation of a career was the ladder. You get a job in your preferred career at the time, then you aim to climb the ladder, usually into more management positions or at least more responsibility. However, many women, including myself, have found themselves spending a not insignificant amount of time climbing the ladder only to realise that the thing that they wanted or loved was 3 rungs below. They then spend, often a lot, of time trying to get back down the ladder. I climbed in seniority and could have taken on more management roles, which was, to be honest, what was expected. However, I realised what I really love is just seeing patients. That's what I want to do. I go to work and see patients. I don't need to run the department. Kim, on the other hand, is extraordinarily accomplished at that, and it's her passion. But it's okay for me to have learnt and realise that I'm happy a few rungs down. However, your generation's career path was described as a lattice. You get your first job, which you think is your passion. With some life experience, you realise it's not quite right, so you move sideways into a related position along the lattice, and it may be completely different. For example, you do journalism, get a job writing little articles in the local paper, and then think it's not quite right for me, so then you move sideways into media and being the media officer for the local politician. Then after some more time, you think my true passion is opening a bookshop, so you leave that and move sideways up or down the lattice. The ladder versus the lattice. I know where I'd rather be. It's the lattice, like you girls. So many opportunities, no preconceived ideas about career paths, the opportunity to be yourself, move sideways or pivot, and just back yourself and go for it. To not have the fear that the decision I make in year 12 is my final one. It most certainly is not. To finish up, I spoke to several friends about what they would tell you. I have dear friends from all aspects of my life. They're an eclectic, intelligent, accomplished and kind crew. I asked friends who ranged from 35 to 50 years of age, and to my surprise, they all answered on similar themes and even used the same phrases which mirrored my own thoughts. Firstly, push yourself out of your comfort zone. Give yourself time to find your passions and then spend your time doing what you truly love in work and play. Don't be in a rush to do this. And most importantly, have fun. As you get older, especially in our jobs, you realise life is way too short not to have fun. Travel anywhere. It's the best type of education. Embrace failure. If you fail an exam, find out how to improve. If you're on the lattice, move sideways or up and ask for help. But don't agonise over every bump in the road. It will all work out in the end. And the mark you receive on an ATAR may seem like everything at the time, and don't get me wrong, it is very important, but it will not define your life. Work your butt off to be proud of yourself, but know there's another way forward. Trust your gut and believe in yourself. Be less worried about what others think, which is definitely easier as you get older. And amazingly, like me, they all said to be savvy with money. Learn to be financially savvy and learn to be a woman who can look after yourself no matter what. Secure your own financial future so you aren't reliant on another's. And finally, just be kind. So I hope I've passed on some useful anecdotes and at least not bored you all with an old lady's whimsical memories, as my kids were concerned I would do, much similar to Kim's. It's been a joy to have the chance to speak to an extraordinary bunch of young women. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Girls, I think we can agree that we've just heard two absolutely incredible speeches from very inspirational women. So I hope that's given you some food for thought. Now, this is very official. No. First of all, Terry, my assistant, is going to help me. We're going to formally thank you for coming in today. We've just got some small gifts to thank you for your time, so we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And then we have a little bit of time before our expo. We're going to let you have a break, but we thought before we let our guest speakers run off, as I'm sure they have important things to do, we have time for 2 questions each. So I'm going to pass the floor to you. Otherwise, we've got some pre-prepared questions up here. So does anyone have any questions? All right, stuff it. I have. Okay. Chanelle, you said you've been to 20 schoolies.
Not including my own. 21.
What is the worst thing you've seen at schoolies?
I mean, there's obviously the funny things, which I'm not going to go into. Look, there's been some terrible things that have happened, which I think are important lessons to learn. Just have a think about what you're doing. I mean, I say to everybody all the time with, I'll be quite blunt here, with drugs, for instance. You actually never know what you're taking. You might be sold a tablet or given a tablet by a friend. To be honest, half the time that's cut with 3/4 talcum powder, so you're not actually getting anything. But you never really know. So the flip side of it is I've actually looked after a girl who was a diabetic, an insulin-dependent diabetic, who took a tablet, then drank too much water, and lots of things happen when you do that, but she nearly died. She ended up on a ventilator in intensive care for 10 days. The other thing is just risk-taking, which obviously increases a lot with drinking and drugs. You know, we've had some terrible things that we've seen. There was a boy that just walked out onto the Gold Coast Highway and got hit by a car and killed. And I think the thing that scares us most is those stupid balconies. I know a lot of hotels lock the balconies now, but on more than one occasion we've seen people who've been injured trying to come out and climb across balconies, 2 in particular who've fallen to their death. Now, apart from the horrible thing for them and, you know, their families, that flow-on effect through the community is huge. You know, I always think for the poor people who find them on the ground, they're not trained in that. They're not trained in emergency medicine. That will stick with them all their life. The horror of them being brought in, you know, their bodies crumpled to us, the paramedics, the police, just the flow-on effects are extraordinary. And when you make that silly, stupid, which is what it is, decision to do that, there's no forward thinking. And that can be really affected by alcohol, you know, and then people like me have to ring your parents and tell them that horrible news. So it is a great time. It's much more tame than when I went, I would say. And it is very controlled in terms of the scenarios. And I don't have a problem with my kids going to the Gold Coast. But it's the uncontrolled scenarios in apartments that scare us as paramedics, police, fireys and emergency physicians, because we all work together.
One thing that I saw years ago when I did work at Gold Coast Hospital as well was a Year 12 school leaver who had had too much to drink, which does happen on schoolies a little bit. But he'd been abandoned by his friends and brought in, and he was so drunk that he didn't realise he needed to go to the toilet, so he wet himself in the hospital bed.
That happens a lot.
And it does happen quite a lot.
We put a nappy on you.
We did. We put a nappy on him. So many hours later, he woke up with a nappy on and very angry parents by his bedside. I know a lot of you will go to schoolies and many of you will be 18 and you're legally able to drink, but one piece of good life advice would be just don't drink too much. You know, enjoy it and then stop.
Can I ask you a question, Kim? You mentioned before about working in a fairly balanced numbers, 40-odd% to 50-something% female to male. What advice would you give to the girls in their working lives in working in that situation in terms of the relationship with males, the domination, not domination sort of situation that might occur? How can you get around that scenario, the situation?
That's a great question, and as female emergency doctors, we grapple with this every day. We have Facebook groups, committee meetings, workshops to talk about how to manage gender inequity. So one pattern I notice is, I mentioned the mistreatment or the subconscious thoughts around when a female becomes pregnant and gives birth, has young children. But another one is females are much more likely to be tagged as difficult or abrasive when something doesn't go perfectly. And that is one thing I want you all to be aware of, and also to call out and to support each other in the workplace. Whereas men are able to get away with it under the good bloke scenario. And I think we see that a bit with rape culture as well, when these men do horrible things and say, oh, but he's a good bloke, but he's a good swimmer. I'm sorry, if you're doing things like that, you're not good. So in the workplace, it's really important when these things happen, whether they be subtle or obvious, that it's called out. And the best way to call it out is in a group and to use the appropriate formal channels. So in the hospital, we have formal channels to report gender discrimination or bullying, which may have a gender component, for example. And it is much, much better to do that if you can with the support of other witnesses or observers or other victims. But I think the number one thing is that we're talking about it, that you're all aware of it, and that you're going into the workplace, into university, with your eyes wide open, knowing that you are just as entitled to opportunity and success as everyone else, regardless of their gender. And we can do that by supporting each other and also giving opportunities to both males and females in equal numbers, being aware of the numbers, how many prize winners are females? How many committee members are females? How many board members are females? How many presidents are females? Too many university societies, for example, the male will be president and the female will be secretary. That's not okay. It should be 50-50.
All right, and just to finish off, one question for the both of you. How have you found balancing family and work life? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but particularly when you're on maternity leave and coming back, I assume, to full-time or shift work, how did you cope with that?
You go first.
So we've both had 3 kids, and it is tricky. There is never a good time to have a baby in a career, but at the same time, it will be one of the most life-changing, important things you ever do, or some of you will choose not to, and that's totally fine as well. I got some terrible career advice. I had people telling me, oh, put off your children until you're 40. You know, my cousin, she had 4 children starting at 39 and she was fine, so just put it off. And I think that's awful advice. I had decided at one point that the most important thing for my husband and I to do was to have a child, and if that meant that I wasn't going to pass my exams and get through specialty training, then that was a decision that I was happy to make. Now, the reality is we're 40% female, most females do have children, and so there's a lot of emergency medicine mothers. So advice would be, I guess, first of all, seek advice from those who've gone before you. Whatever career you choose to do, there will be females ahead of you and there will be females with children ahead of you. Ask them how they've done it. I tried to choose a good time, career-wise, to have children, and then once you do, it's definitely not something that you can do alone. You really do need the support of your community, so that involves your partner, really should be just as hands-on as you. Family become really important, and my mum in particular was incredibly helpful. And then the other way we just get around it as doctors is we pay for help. You know, I have a nanny, I have a cleaner, I've had housekeepers, I have gardeners, pool guys, everything. We really are using our tribe. We have babysitters on top of nannies, and that's who had my children the night before last when my husband travelled and I was on a late shift. The reality is, you know, we have help and we don't do it all alone.
Right. It's very, very difficult, I think. Some people find it easier than others. I work half-time now, so that's 2 out of the 4 shifts a week, but I still do on-call and weekends. Kim actually works more than me, probably more double, and I'm always in awe of Kim. I think there's a couple of things. Look, I sat my fellowship exam, so my final specialty exam, when my eldest son was 14 weeks old. That meant I'd studied my entire pregnancy, had 2 weeks off, and for Jack's, you know, first 3 months of life, I was in that room. Now, I relied on my mum to come and sit while I pumped milk and she gave him a bottle, and I relied on my husband to pretty much take him every other day to the office or drive him around all weekend to do the same. It was very, very difficult, but it was worth it in the end. And I think from that, I completely agree about having your community around. I could not have done that without my family. Choosing your partner very well. Look, I think most women in emergency medicine have amazing partners. Some of them are married to other emergency physicians or doctors. I'm not. But we have been together so long that there's an understanding of how shift work works. And I could not do this if he wasn't such an amazing dad and husband. I do think it's harder now they're in older grades of school. I think looking back when they were toddlers and babies, it seemed hard, but, you know, long daycare is brilliant. And outsource as well.
So if they try to get out of a day of school because they say they're feeling
like today,
unwell, how does that go over with you two?
Well, I said, my eldest, you know, he has had a cold. If you're the child of a doctor, you pretty much have to be dying to stay at home. Obviously, unless it's COVID times where you can't go if you've got a sniffly nose. But he just had to go. Like, it's no different to you know, I mean, it does make it difficult if the school calls saying they're sick and I'm in the middle of managing a trauma. You know, I'm just going to, much to the school's horror, and I say you're just going to have to wait for 2 hours. But I do agree that outsourcing, now obviously we're fortunate that we have a good income. I have a cleaner. We don't have a babysitter or nanny anymore because they're old enough to let themselves in. But things like if my beloved ironing builds up and there's now 20 of my husband's business shirts, which he says he'll iron but he never will, I drop them at the ironing shop. And that $30 once a month or once every 3 weeks is just worth the sanity. You know, even if you can only afford a cleaner to do the bathrooms and the floor once a month, sometimes that's worth that money for that juggle. I'm difficult, I'm a control freak at home, so I do find it very hard to outsource, but I've learnt that I have to.
I think one of the best things I ever did when I first started working was hiring a cleaner.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do that. My children also try the I'm too sick to go to school today, Mum. My daughter tried it today, and it's hard to get away with as a doctor. I do feel a little sorry for them at times because she said, oh, I've got a sore tummy, so I had her lay down and I examined her and it really wasn't that sore.
Yeah.
So then I gave her a Panadol and sent her to school.
I mean, I've made my son go to basketball training when he had a broken finger last year, which I just ignored. So, you know.
All right.
But the reality is school attendance, a bit like work attendance, is really important. And like I said, showing up is just really important. If you're not there, you can't be learning and growing. And so, bad luck. Darling, off you go.
We're very hard.
All right. Girls, can we please put our hands together for our keynote speakers? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've just been given the job of introducing these very inspirational women who are sitting behind me and Miss Little. So, I kid. Okay, so I'll start down this end. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Isabel Bosman. So Isabel is coming to us from the law industry. So some of our Year 10s learned a little bit about this yesterday. Isabel studied a combined Bachelor of Law and International Relations at Bond Uni. She graduated in 2019 and went on to complete a grad dip in legal practice before being admitted as a solicitor to the Supreme Court in Queensland in 2020. While studying at uni, Isabel worked as a law clerk, and since being admitted as a solicitor, she has worked primarily in the areas of family law and domestic violence. Isabel currently works for Millwater Tyrrell Law as a family lawyer and has a particular interest in child-related matters. So can we please welcome Isabel? All right, Stacey's my old neighbour. So I asked her over the fence if she'd come. Okay, Stacey graduated from Mount A, so she's an old girl, and completed her Bachelor of Business at QUT in 2017. She's currently Media and Public Affairs Officer for the Queensland Police Service and manages the police social media accounts, some of which have over 1 million followers. Stacey's role is to inform and engage with external stakeholders, including media and Queenslanders. She delivers community safety messages and messaging on all policing matters. For the past 12 months, she has been responsible for the external messaging for COVID. Stacey enjoys working in the reactive and proactive space where no 2 days are the same. And as a particular perk in her job, she gets to cuddle and look after the police puppies. So let's welcome Stacey. Okay, I'm very excited about this next one. Okay, Annalise Mitchell graduated from QUT in 2016 and is also an old girl. What year did you graduate from here? 2011, awesome. And she joins us as a civil and environmental engineer. So we have a number of girls very interested in engineering. During her time at uni, she worked with a civil construction company, helping construct the gas and water pipelines for coal seam gas production. In her final years at uni, she tutored first-year subjects and worked part-time as a geotech engineer. After graduation, she worked full-time with the same company, tasked with undertaking ground investigations and ensuring the ground had the strength to hold whatever was being built on or in it. Annalise has worked on multiple project sites, including roads, tunnels, dumps, bridges, mine sites, ports, airports and railways, just to name a few. She now holds a challenging role with the Queensland Government, remediating and rehabilitating abandoned mines throughout the state. Let's give her a round of applause. All right, next up we have Anne-Marie Russell, who is someone I had to contact on Instagram. She has a very impressive Instagram following. She has been the winner of the HIA Queensland Property Styling Awards 2016, 2017, 18, 19 and 20, as well as the International Homestager of the Year Award. She has been a finalist as the most influential woman in property and National Gold Area Award, with Real Estate Awards for Excellence 2019, Best Innovation Award, REIQ Awards for Excellence, and she is also the author of Price Truths and Negotiation Truths. Now, I can tell you with absolute certainty, many of your parents here would follow Anne-Marie on Instagram. She is quite inspirational in the real estate space. She styles, designs, sells, she does it all, and previously worked as a nutritionist. Paediatric dietitian. My mistake. So anyway, very inspirational. If you get a chance later, because I know you don't have your phones on you, you can have a look at her Instagram. Okay. Moving along, we have Kristen Stewart, who is, I hope I'm saying this right, a propulsion engineer at Queensland-based Gilmore Space, working on cutting-edge hybrid rocket technologies. That sounds very smart. Okay, she first joined the team in 2016 as an intern and was a member of the software and GNC team before joining Propulsion. Nowadays, Kristen spends her time conducting testing and analysis on orbital launch vehicle rocket motors, helping take Gilmore and Australia to space. I don't know if I gave you a round of applause. Let's give them both a round of applause. Very exciting. Now, I already know some girls have come up to say hello to Belle, who is also a good friend of mine. Belle is really an inspiration. She is the CEO of not-for-profit association most of you will have heard of, called Y-Lead. She engages with 30,000 students across Australia and New Zealand annually and believes strongly in the collective power of young people, recognising that when they are empowered, they can do things beyond their imagination. Since her high school graduation, life has presented Belle with an interesting and diverse career pathway, proving that, I've lost my place, our journey is not always linear. Belle's professional career started with a pursuit of passion for performance, dance and musical theatre, seeing her travel overseas and commit to numerous commercial contracts in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. In her early 20s, Belle started to question her definition of success and sought out a more corporate career where she became a fully licensed real estate agent, running and operating a small business and developing the highly awarded Team Yorston. During this time, she engaged in many voluntary community projects where she was awarded a Paul Harris Fellow, one of the highest international honours for her work in developing Rotary's youth programs. Belle had a daunting career change into the not-for-profit sector 10 years ago after a life-changing trip to Tanzania, which reminded her of the joy and fulfilment she gains from adventure and youth. Pursuing her passion once again, she has been integral in developing and enhancing Y-Lead's experiences, delivering them herself to thousands of young people. Her combination of an adventurous spirit and skills in sales, events and people management have supported her leadership in many projects, and in particular student leadership conferences from Schoolies Alternatives and travel expeditions. In 2018, she stepped up and stepped out to take on the role of CEO with Y-Lead. Since taking on the role of CEO, Belle's leadership skills and confidence have grown exponentially, proving that sometimes we just need to take our 20 seconds of courage. Right. Next up, we have Fiona Hammond, who many of you will recognise. Fiona was born and raised on the north side of Brisbane and was elected as councillor for the ward of Marchand in 2008. Having raised children has helped her understand the importance of creating a quality environment for families. This is why she has campaigned for many local issues, including improvements to local shopping strips and parks. Fiona has been actively involved in the local community for a number of years and is working hard to improve local roads, parks and infrastructure. Fiona has previously served as Chair of the Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee, Deputy Chairperson for Infrastructure Committee and Deputy Chairperson of the Families and Community Services Committee. She was also appointed to sit on the Finance, Economic Development and Administration Committee and the Public and Active Transport Committee. It's a lot of committees. Yeah. Fiona is currently Deputy Chairperson for the City Planning and Economic Development Committee. For 8 years, Fiona was a trustee for the Lord Mayor's Charitable Trust. In this role, she worked hard to support disadvantaged groups and individuals across the city. Fiona is passionate about resolving local issues and ensuring residents' voices are heard. In her role as councillor, she regularly meets with residents and attends community events to discuss local issues. She has worked tirelessly to upgrade and improve the local area and is very proud of her achievements. Can we give her a round of applause? And last but not least, we have Adele Fraser. Now, were you a captain here when you went in? School captain? Okay, she was a school captain. What year did you graduate from here? Yeah, nice. Okay. Adele is a user experience designer for a digital marketing agency in Brisbane. After graduating from Mount A in 2012, she studied a Bachelor of Fine Arts, Interactive and Visual Design with a minor in marketing and studies in nutrition. You guys have that in common. Except you said dietitian, but... and physical activity at QUT. While finishing her studies, Adele was hired by Universal Store to be their graphic designer. After about 12 months there, she saw an opportunity to make improvements to the company's online user experience and design better for people, to make their online experience the best they can be. Adele moved into a UX, UI, user experience and user interface role and worked on many projects with Universal to improve customer experiences. Now as a UX designer, she researches how people interact and feel when using websites and seeks to improve their online experiences through excellent design. Day to day, completing competitor research, running user testing sessions, presenting findings to stakeholders, collaborating with developers, creating user flows, creating working high-fidelity prototypes and delivering user-friendly website experiences. So thanks for joining us. Yeah. All right. So I apologise for just reading off that, but as you can see, we have a myriad of experiences here and I really hope that you get something out of this panel. So I'll pass over to our MC. Do you want an introduction? No.
Thank you very much. And we really are very, very proud to host an event such as this today. We have a memory, all of us on stage have a memory of what it's like to be in Year 10 and be in Year 12 and have imposed on you sort of questions about, well, what do you want to do after school? But actually not really understanding very much about what the world of work offers. And sometimes what can happen when we're deciding on our future is that we choose what is familiar to us because we don't know any better. So the aim of today is to really expand your understanding of what's out there and the types of questions you might ask to find out so that you have job satisfaction in your career. I know that when I was at school, my parents were very focused on what I might do as a career, and I went to see the movie Top Gun. And I don't know if you've seen it, it's an oldie but a goodie. But I decided after the movie Top Gun that I was going to be a fighter pilot. Now, those of you who know me know that I'm a merry-go-round kind of person. I don't go on roller coasters, so being a fighter pilot was perhaps a stretch beyond everyone's imagination. And I remember my father pointing out very pointedly, he was a very blunt person, he said, "But you're rubbish at maths." And I said, "Well, I am rubbish at maths. Do you need that to be a fighter pilot?" And he said, "Well, of course you do." And I thought, oh, I need to find out more. So I'm particularly interested in the panellists who were Mount Alvernia old girls. So Adele and Stacey, I'm wondering if you can perhaps speak to whether or not where you are now is where you envisaged you'd be. When you were sitting in these seats, as our girls are now, what did you envisage for yourself?
Stacey can kick it off.
Completely different. I remember sitting where you girls are now. I barely passed English. It was my worst subject, similar to maths. And now I write for a living. So it just goes to show that if you keep going with what you want to do and what you believe in, I suppose anything can happen. But yeah.
I think I'm probably a little different. I think I always thought I was going to have a career within the creative space. Art, home economics was like my favourite subjects, and I just didn't really know where it was going to go. Everyone used to say that like illustration was like the main sort of like design, but I didn't really think I was like too good at drawing. So I think finding this interactive and like technological sort of side, I feel like I've really like resonated with like that sort of experience, and yeah, I think that's probably a little bit different, but I mean, I could have pursued a career in tennis, but like, nah.
What about other members of the panel? I mean, how many of you knew for certain that what you're doing now is where you would actually end up?
Not at all. When I left school a long time ago, of course went to university and did a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Maths. Weird combination, I understand. But I picked up politics. I dropped it very quickly. And who would have thought back then I would become a politician after being not very interested back then and actually dropped the subject?
I think I gave myself the opportunity. I think I get bored really easily. So I wanted to do something that was going to be different every day. So I think in terms of what I picked something that would give me that flexibility and that ability to move between industries or, you know, between what I do every day, basically.
Well, I graduated in 1983 from State High. Back then, we didn't have as many opportunities with courses at university. I was a creative at State High. I was a music nerd, had elastic violin case. And because I couldn't draw, I'm a creative spirit, and because I couldn't draw, I didn't do art. I ended up doing all the science subjects, doing okay. Back in the TE score days, I think I got 930. Did a science degree, biochemistry, because something to do. Halfway through science went, I've got to make a living out of this. Okay, I'll do dietetics. Did dietetics for 8 years, had a family, and then started saying yes to the things that really made my heart happy. Things that were low risk, so that if I didn't succeed at them, I could say, oh well, doesn't matter. Next. And so over a period of 30 years, I am in a position where I can't wait to get out of bed every morning. I control my own life. There is no distinction between work and play, because my work is my play. We laugh. My days are joyous. They're very different. I get bored very quickly as well too. I suppose, and I work with my husband, so yeah, that's another story. But look, I think the point that I'm trying to make is that you most likely won't end up where you thought you were going. So find something that you love, maybe, to start off with, that brings you joy. The best advice I was ever given was just start something. When I was a mum and I was at home bringing my little boys up, and I was saying to my husband, I don't want to go back to dietetics. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Best advice, just start something. And I started an eBay store back in the day where there was no online shopping. I had a blog when people used to say, what's a blog? And I just said yes to opportunities that came my way that led me to where I am, which is just so ridiculously different to being a paediatric dietitian. But yeah, the main point I want to make is just start with something that you love, and don't be scared to step into fear and change it if you don't, enjoy what you're doing.
Does that resonate with anyone else, that advice, just start something? Do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think I resonate so much with what you've said, because one of the big things when I think about when I was in year 10 or when I was in year 12, Fiona and I were just talking, she said, how do young people work these days? Does everyone know what they want to do? And it's like, no, half of us know what we want to do, half of us have no idea, but there's no right or wrong, and we put so much pressure on needing to know, but you don't need to know. Like, lots of us have now discovered what it is that we love, but it took so many different avenues and so many different pathways to get there. So to just start and just give something a shot, there shouldn't be so much fear in failure, because if you don't pursue something, it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that maybe it wasn't for you, but you've learnt so much from it. So if you can sort of have this little mind shift where you go, it's not necessarily a failure, but it's a learning opportunity. And you can learn what you can love, and you learn what you don't love, and both of them, I feel, are just as valuable. And that was what it was for me. I started in musical theatre and commercial dance because I loved it. I was so passionate about it. And I've been very lucky to be supported by an amazing family that have pushed me to do whatever I love. But I got into the industry and the career, and I was challenged because I started probably at 18 to 20 understanding myself more and what I valued, and that was being contradicted. And so I had to work out what was more important to me, and what I needed around me was great support, and I hadn't found that yet. Hadn't found my sort of support network in that industry, which is where I kind of questioned and tried something different. So don't feel like you need to know. Don't put pressure on people. Just like, oh, that's cool. What are you playing with? Yeah, it doesn't have to be like, I'm going to do this. It's like, what are you playing with? What options are you looking at? And explore all of those.
Can I just add to that very quickly? I also want to say that no education is ever wasted. I mean, I've got a biochemistry degree, nutrition and dietetics. I apply that science and the science principles in my real estate business, which is very data-driven and not chaotic and random like other real estate models. So I'm still using my science. I've just written a paper, a retrospective study on the impact of high quality staging on house prices. It's the first data of its kind in Australia. I couldn't do that if I didn't have a science degree. I've also got a son who's almost a doctor. He'll be a doctor at the end of this year. And when he comes home and talks about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, I know what he's talking about. So nothing is ever wasted. So, yeah.
Some of the reality of career decision making is that people do what's familiar to them or what seems familiar. And so if I watch a TV show where a lawyer is fighting for justice and criminal prosecution, I feel that that is automatically what I'm going to do as a lawyer. I know I certainly had that assumption when I went into law and found out very quickly it was quite different. Isabel, I'm interested in your experience. You work as a solicitor and family lawyer. What does a day in the life of a solicitor and family lawyer look like?
So my days aren't as different as some other people's might be. It's a lot of admin work, so it is a lot of writing, drafting, redrafting. You do have that one-on-one connection with clients, and to build that connection with the clients that you have, particularly in my field, which is predominantly family law based, is really important, and that's probably the most rewarding part of my job. It's not like you see on Suits or anything like that. You know, it's not as glamorous as they make it out to be. It certainly isn't, especially in my field. But it's still just as rewarding, I think, and that's the part of it that I enjoy the most.
What about you, Kristen? You work as a propulsion engineer, and I think your bio talks about astrophysics. What does that look like on an ordinary day? And I think for girls in particular, there is that's a label. But what does that involve daily?
Yeah, engineering is one of those kind of questionable fields where you can be doing so many different things per day. And my job particularly, I often am a test engineer where I get my hands dirty actually testing the motors that we design at the company, which can go from working in the office and looking at the design on the computer and looking at the intricacies of that to then taking it out to the test site, which is out in whoop whoop and, you know, getting the work boots on and actually putting it on the test stand and firing an engine. So it's, I'm very lucky in my role that I get to span the whole thing, and because I'm the same, I kind of need need something different to keep me pushing and keep me challenged each day. So yeah, very lucky that I can try a bit of everything and see the whole spectrum of, for an engineer, see the whole spectrum of the design is a pretty wonderful thing.
John Lennon talked about life happening to people while you're busy making other plans, and I think it's probably very true. We talk about job satisfaction. You're all highly motivated people, have achieved great things in your careers, seem to be very motivated and satisfied. What is it, do you think, and this is for the whole panel, what is it that you think gives you job satisfaction in the long term? What are you looking for? And appreciating each individual story is different. What do you think is definitive in job satisfaction?
It's a hard question, that one, because it is so different for each person. Job satisfaction for me is having the challenge. So as I said, I do enjoy something different because it is always challenging. So for me, I'm a curious person. I'm always asking, why is this the case? Why is it like that? Which is very suited for, you know, an engineering science kind of mind. And job satisfaction for me is getting to continue to ask those questions and being pushed by my boss to, you know, keep performing, keep improving, all the rest as you go forward. But I think one of the other great things about job satisfaction is enjoying your workplace. I think that's incredibly important. So I know a lot of people who, you know, they end up in a career that they love the career, but they aren't enjoying that particular place. And for me, I love it, but I think one of the biggest things I've kind of learned going through is to recognise when you aren't enjoying a particular space and to have the courage to move on or find something else so that you enjoy the space that you're working in day to day.
So I've just recently gone through a job change. So yeah, I was at Universal Store for 3.5 years, and it was incredibly difficult to make a decision to move on for my career, even though I didn't know like who I was going to be working with, whether it'd be a really good connection, because I found at like Universal Store, the people that I worked with was amazing. Like the work that I was doing wasn't challenging enough for me, and I really had to make that decision to like half enjoy what I'm doing, but like really enjoy the people that I'm surrounded by to like that help you push yourself. And just recently I came into the advice of like, there's like 3 main things to really think about when it comes to like making a decision with your workplace. 1, good pay, 2, good people, and 3, good work. If you don't have all 3, you really should consider like moving on. And that really made me like think about like quite simply, like where I was, 2 of the 3 went there. So where I'm at now, I would say 2 of the 3 are there. But yeah, it's just going to be still like you know, moving forward and stuff. So I think for job satisfaction, like for me mainly it comes down to work and people. People being the main one. If you do not enjoy the people you're surrounded by, if they do not encourage you to succeed and achieve like really great things, then that was like, yeah, that's a main one for me. So.
And it's so true that we've all been in workplaces that can be toxic at times. But we rarely, as women, have conversations about pay. And I know that there are students sitting in the audience who probably haven't thought about pay. I'm wondering if anyone is prepared to reflect on why that's important, particularly for women.
Just a thought that's coming to my mind. When I was leaving school, my first year out of uni, first year out of school, sorry, I had a partner, and I was going. He was unsure of what he wanted to do, and I had already gone to uni and was starting to get into my career. And whenever we met new people, and I told them what I did, they were always so impressed, and I think he felt a bit belittled by that, or you know. I never really delved into it, but when we got to breaking up, it was, I kind of realised I think he felt a little bit emasculated by me, possibly. And I was always going to be, like I earned more than him. And I think that was a really hard thing for him to deal with. But I was also doing the work that allowed me to get that pay. And I guess now I have another partner now, and I earn more than him now, and he's perfectly fine with it. He loves it. He's like, yeah, I'll be a stay-at-home dad or whatever I need to do. But yeah, you need to. It's hard. I don't know any instances of where women are doing the same work as men and getting paid less, but I know it happens. But yeah, it's really important to. You shouldn't feel like. I think women suffer from imposter syndrome. You think that you're in a position and you shouldn't be. Or that someone's going to find you out soon enough and they're going to think, wait, you can't do this job. But you've got to tell yourself, I am here, I can do this job, I deserve this pay.
Can I say something about pay? I think you've also got to realise that you can't start at the top. So you've got to be prepared to, as Gary Vee says, I don't know if anyone follows Gary Vee, you've got to work in the dirt as well as in the clouds. So you've got to be prepared to go without pay to get where you want to go. The good thing about a good pay is that it takes away the stress in life and it enables you to be able to provide for your children and do the things that you want to do. But if you're not happy in what you're doing, but the pay's good, it just defeats the entire purpose. So the pay is secondary, really, if you're doing what you love, because if you're doing what you love, the proceeds will come in some way.
While you've got the mic, Anne-Marie, you are an employer as well as a worker, and you are an innovator. I'm interested in the careers market post-2021. Obviously, it's hopefully, by that stage, a post-COVID environment, but there's been huge volatility as a result of COVID-19 and, probably more to come. How important do you think the ability to innovate, the ability to create, the ability to be entrepreneurial, how important do you think that will be moving into the future?
Extremely important. The jobs that are in the future, 10, 15 years down the track, haven't even been invented. I think the most important thing is that when you're in a sea of sameness in a particular career, it doesn't matter what it is, you have to be able to differentiate yourself and stand out so that people choose you over your competitors, particularly when you're in small business and you're earning your own money and your efforts are everything and you don't have a salary. It's up to you to create your income. There's a wonderful book out there that I would recommend. I can't remember the author, but I follow them on Instagram. Instagram's where I get all my business. Blue Ocean Shift. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. The Instagram account is Blue Ocean Strategy. And it's a concept where you have to create your own blue ocean. An ocean where there is no red, there's no sharks, there's no blood, there's no competition, there's no fighting. And if you create that blue ocean and you're not competing with anyone because you're so different, then the sky's the limit. And when I actually read that book, I sat back and went, oh my goodness, I didn't even realise that I've created my blue ocean. I don't have any competitors. And so sort of sitting back and reflecting on the way that we run our business is that you do have to try to make yourself different. You do have to differentiate because it's a very competitive world out there. And there are a lot of people fighting for the positions that you're going to be going for. So in whatever way you can, differentiate.
Part of the aim of today is to build your consciousness around understanding the workplace. And certainly, those of us who've been working for a couple of decades come with a range of experiences. I found my early career to be a really productive, happy time. And later stages, there were definitely some challenges. And one of those, and I found it shocking, was that though in a female-dominated profession, times when I was working inside boys' schools, largely male-dominated. I found that experience to be at times, not always, but at times alienating. And in the 70s and 80s, we were talking about sexual harassment and legislating for sexual harassment. In 2020, we've just seen paradigm shifts in Canberra and opening up of conversations about the treatment of women in Parliament House and more broadly. I'm wondering if any of you are prepared to, reflect on your experience as a woman in the workforce, or the extent to which gender may impact opportunities or things you need to be aware of as a woman entering a workforce, which for many of these women in front of us will happen perhaps in 2025, 2026, 2027.
Can I start by saying I'm very lucky in my area because the administration in Brisbane City Council, and this is something, ladies, to be very, very proud of, it's 50% women and 50% men. We are the only level of government that have those stats. So we've got our first female deputy mayor in our history. So that is something to aspire to. But in saying that, in politics, I will be dreadfully honest with you. We get judged. You just look at the female politicians, men don't. And I'll give you some examples of this. You look at our female politicians and how they're judged for their shoes, their clothes, their hair. My hair's never perfect, okay? I just accept that. But we do judge our female leaders, and that is something that we have to stop. And only us women can stop that. Look at Julia Gillard before she was a Prime Minister, first female Prime Minister. All the photos were from her stomach up, basically. As soon as she became elected, all those horrible cartoonists went out and portrayed her figure in all those cartoons, her big nose, her red hair. Do they do that to men as much? No. When I first started this job when I was 35, I walked in for breakfast meetings. You have to make sure, ladies, that you are presented well, because they will judge you. A male will walk in, one of my colleagues, I won't embarrass who he is, one of my colleagues walked in and looked like he'd just rolled out of bed. And do you know what they said to him? Oh, he's just one of the lads. Could you imagine if I had walked in like I had just crawled out of bed? What kind of judgment that I would get from my community? So we are judged differently. Ladies, the only thing that people can't take off you, okay, and I'm serious about that. They can call you names. I get it every day, but I love it now. I didn't at first. A good friend of mine sitting out the back, and she'll know I used to come home and go, oh my gosh, someone said this to me today. Now I laugh about it and go, try harder. The Teflon's is working. But I've gone off track. I've totally forgotten what I was going to say. But presentation. Oh, and what people can't take off you. So I've been called all sorts of things. And I stand on a lot of corners and talk to a lot of people, so I do get called a lot of things around the area. The only thing that people, men, women, children, whoever, cannot take off you, remember this always, is your morals and your integrity. If you keep those two things, ladies, no one can do anything at all to you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. I just wanted to add on to that because it kind of connects back to the question about pay. It starts with us, and we talk about the fact that, yes, we do judge these politicians, but I have to put my hand up and say I'm guilty of looking at a woman and consciously going, oh, look how they're dressed today. And so I've had to learn to program that out of me and not look at that, but then ask them a question to get to know them and learn who they are, what their morals are, and what they stand for. But some of the things that we're talking about, I know particularly in Year 10, seems so advantageous, and there's years above when these things are going to happen. But what happens now is how you respond to those kinds of things. And we brought up the sexual harassment, and consent is so big at the moment. It starts with us actually having those conversations ourselves and being courageous enough to do it. And that's when you'll start to find everyone is comfortable doing it at different points. And if your friends around you aren't ready for that yet, that's okay, but please don't eliminate them. There's a big thing that I'm really at the moment is in this cancel culture, and I think we can actually cancel ourselves out, and we can cancel our friends out, and we can cancel out potential employers or in potential careers or potential things that might really aid us in the future. But it starts with us now. Like if you see something that doesn't sit right, or you've learnt that maybe that in being educated that isn't the right thing to say, be unafraid to start now. Start at the weekend at the party, or start when someone says something to you tomorrow about a subject that you've got coming up and the teacher's education around that, or something like that. Like it starts now, and all those things then enter into your workforces and what you create, and you're creating your own future as well. So.
On a level that could maybe relate more of like a part-time work sort of situation, I worked at the cinemas at Chermside for about 4.5 years, all through uni, once I had graduated school. And I don't know if, I'm sure everyone knows, but in the candy bar, girls have to wear this ridiculous, short, pinstriped dress that looks like, yeah, the old candy bar sort of outfit. And you had to wear that outfit, you had to wear that uniform when you were working in that sort of department. And it was like, just thinking about it now, was terrifying thinking of having to wear that, and the amount of guys that just sexualized you at that sort of an age was just, I refused to work in that department. I just was like, nope, not happening. I can't believe that the guys can just come in and they'll just wear their black uniform. They don't even have to wear the white pants and the striped shirt. I just thought it was really unfair to have to like force like that sort of age group to have to be in that uniform, and yeah, we just kind of forced our way to not have to wear that regardless of management.
I get to wear men's pants because they don't make women's pants. They're making women's pants now, but the difference is I love the men's ones because they're so like breezy and comfortable. And then you wear the work pants that are designed for women, and they're so tight. You can't bend down. And then like we talk a lot about what you wear, but I found on work sites where, I'm one in 50, there's 50 other men and I'm the only woman there. It doesn't matter what you're wearing at that point, they realise that you're a woman. And it's different in my industry. I think it's nice. It's not that subconscious mistreatment that you get. You actually get treated quite nicely because they know that you're a minority. Whereas I'm really interested in the other women who have to deal with those really subconscious and deep-seated systemic kind of issues.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I think you're right. There has been a shift. So I remember when I started uni many years ago now, I was doing law and economics. And I remember walking into the economics building, and we were 400 students. And I think I was one at that stage of about 15 women. And in my tutorial group, I was the only woman. And I remember feeling quite stupid, a lot, because I would have a lot of male colleagues in the group who were my age, students themselves, though I was a bit younger. When I asked a question, they'd make me feel quite stupid. Oh, don't you know that? And I remember the tutor at the time, made special arrangements to meet with me one-on-one. And it was a sort of creepy environment. In that case, it was a really alienating environment. And I remember feeling when I got the results back, and I'd in fact beaten all of them, I remember feeling like, great, I'll never feel stupid again in front of you lot. So that was an experience where I felt truly alienated, as opposed to some of the experiences I've had as an older person where you just feel excluded. So that the thing that can happen sometimes in male-dominated industries is that the boys organise, to go out on the town and we'll do Friday drinks as the blokes, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a problem, except that most of the people who make decisions around the promotions are also the blokes. So if you are socially excluded, it can in fact influence your opportunities. And when you learn that you're excluded because you are a woman, and that's why, you do sometimes sort of find that mystifying. So, you know, we sincerely hope that doesn't happen to your generation coming through, but it definitely is a reality. It's that unconscious bias. Have any of you experienced unconscious bias?
I guess this might be in the opposite vein, but I was going to say that in my role as a propulsion engineer at a startup company, it is heavily male-dominated, but I don't think it's... society is changing, and there is a much more turn towards minorities, whether they be women, people of colour, whatever, looking for them to have opportunities where it's typically been male-dominated. And so my experience in the small company I work for has been very good as a woman, and when I started, I was the only woman working there until there was about, or only woman in a science field working there until there was about 30 people in the company. So my company take the stance of, you know, trying to encourage people from minority areas to join the company and give them the opportunities that they need. So I just wanted to say that I think while we know that these things are happening in society and that they are everywhere and we know it, there's certainly hope. There is still a lot of companies out there that are really making an effort in this space and doing great work in it, I think.
I have 2 men who work in my office, which is quite unusual for a female politician to have 2 men working for her. In my early days, I agree with you, things have changed. In my early days of my career, political career, some people found it really hard to talk to me because they wanted to talk to the man in the office. So that was a bit of a struggle at the beginning, but we managed to go through. But now people have changed, and that discrimination, I suppose, has definitely changed, and that's because we're speaking out a little bit more. So
I was just going to add to that. I think one of the things, not just morals and integrity that you get to hold, but it's your skills. And we were talking, Anne-Marie was saying before about the innovation thing and discovering that, and you know, find out what it is that you are really good at. And Mount A is an incredible playground for you to explore all of those things and actually own your strengths and own your skills. Your skills are also things that can't be taken away from you. So in that regard, you choose also good work, good people. If it's not good people and you're not blessed in that workplace, then you find that courage to step away from it, because there are so many workplaces and so many industries that if it's not the industry, there might be a couple of companies within that industry that are really paving ways. So there's lots of hope there for that in the future as well.
Belle, while you've got the mic, you work in the field of leadership. We know that in key industries there are issues around women and underrepresentation. We certainly know that there is an issue around female leadership or lack thereof across, you know, business, industry, etc. What is it that you think drives that? Why aren't women more and more becoming leaders?
Because they're scared. Because they're fear. It's fear. It's I sat on taking on my leadership role for 18 months. I knew it was something that I wanted to do, but I was so scared to do it. And so this comes back to what you can do now. Find your friends that will be with you and will support you no matter what. Because on those days where someone makes you feel stupid, I call my friend Christy and I say, this happens. And she said, babe, you're the best thing that's ever existed on this planet. Rah, rah. Like, you need your hype girls and you need to know who they are. And when you have them, that's what you're forming now, is those connections, so that in 5 years' time or in 2 years' time when you're at university or wherever it is, you can call them and you say, I had this incident which I can't believe it happened. I need to clear it. I need to get it off my chest. And they'll be like, you are my queen. Like, you just do it. You've got this. And so that's what you can be doing now. And in regards to that, it is literally just fear. And, you know, the reason why I'm here today is because Miss Loveday and I together are part of a community where we've sat and we've had similar conversations with women that are very high up in their careers and their industries, but spoken about the same things. I want to take on this role, but I don't know if I'm the right person to do it. I don't know if I can do it. It's like, yes, you can, but you need those people to back you, and you need to back yourself. And when you get into that position, you've got those skills, you've got those morals and integrity, and you absolutely smash those glass ceilings. And that's how we're doing it. And that's how, there's so many stories out there now. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. But you've got to have the courage, and I think what gives me courage is having those people in my corner and spending time to just be by myself and go, what am I good at? Yes, own that. What do I love? Yes, own that. All right, let's get out there.
And I'll just add my go-to person is actually the lady sitting in the yellow shirt, Pip Crichton. So thank you very much for being my person, Pip.
What Belle said about owning your skills, sometimes you have to really grit your teeth and step into fear to own those skills and to get where you want to get. I started real estate 10 years ago in an all-male office, except for the little secretaries in their short skirts. And I was very focused with every property because I'd been in presentation and styling up until then. Very focused on every property that I did, spending the time to get the presentation right, even though I didn't have my own inventory back then. And my male boss was terribly annoyed with the amount of time that I spent on these homes, our clients' principal place of residence, their biggest assets, because I wanted to get them the best sale price. Took me aside and basically just said, essentially what you're doing, Anne-Marie, is you're scrubbing toilets. It's beneath you. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It'll sell. Who cares what it sells for? And this is real estate. This is what it is. It'll just sell. Who cares? Stop wasting your time on the client and their needs and the best outcome for them, and just go out and get me more listings. I continued to focus on presentation to the point that when they used to do the stock run every Thursday and go and look at everyone's listings, they would deliberately not come and look at mine. And one of mine, I'll still remember in that year, I rang up my friend from Home Beautiful and said, this is really gorgeous and I've just styled it. And she came out and we got it on the cover of Home Beautiful, and my male boss still wouldn't come out and see the property. Now, a couple of weeks after that, because there was a big fuss with the Home Beautiful, he brought the National Human Resources Manager up from Sydney, and they locked me in a room and they said, you can either be a stylist or a real estate agent, you can't be both. So make up your mind. Very intimidating. I felt like I had just robbed a bank. I was so terrified. I went home that night, drank a bottle of wine with my husband, came up with Cape Cod Residential, which is the name of my real estate business, and I hit the ground. I walked into the Office of Fair Trading and registered a business name and just hit the ground running. So sometimes when you do come across, adversity, particularly based on, whatever, you've just got to grit your teeth and step into fear. My mum was a music lecturer, and I will always remember, when I was a little girl, I used to hear her at the university when she was taking this terrible guitar class. None of them could play a note. And she would give them instructions, and then she'd say, now class, assume a confident air and strum. And that's how I look at everything in my life. Assume a confident air and strum. Even if you can't do it, just grit your teeth and step into fear.
I think that does deserve a round of applause. And for those in the audience, you would know that that's absolutely what we encourage of you at Mount Alvernia, to do your very best, strive, put the work in, and really be ambitious for yourselves in whatever you are passionate about. When I was at school, sitting where you are now, I had a careers counsellor give me some advice. Her advice to me was, I've thought about it. I think the ideal career for you is espionage. And if you know what that word means, it means become a spy. Now, I'm not sure what I was actually putting out in the world to suggest I should do subterfuge. I thought about it a little bit, I thought, yes, I could possibly see myself as a spy. But I wasn't entirely sure what one studied to be a spy. I know, careers counsellors, Loveday. I'm interested across the panel, if you wouldn't mind. What do you think the best advice you've ever been given is in relation to work? And then maybe the worst advice.
The best advice I was ever given was from my father. So our parents can give us, well, they do every day give us wisdom. His advice to all of us, as 6 of us kids, was you can be whoever you want to be. You are your own limitation. And that probably put me where I was today. The worst advice I was ever given, interesting enough, was from my brothers. Because that happens, right, girls? I wanted to go into agricultural science as a child, as a young adult into university. But my brothers told me back in the 80s that there was no employment for women in agriculture. And I really, now I'm married to a farmer, and I love agriculture. So I wish I didn't take that advice and study agriculture instead of what I did.
Questions for the whole panel.
I've only had a short career, so I can't really think of anything. And I agree, I think your parents give you a lot of words of wisdom. I remember saying to my dad, I was like, thank you for making me such a blokey girl. And he was like, I didn't raise you as a blokey girl. I raised you, as, you know, to fend for yourself in a man's world. And so that was really nice. But lately I've resonated with the you can't be what you can't see. So, you know, you've got to find the work you know, a workplace where you can see those positions that you want to get into, and that workplace embodies what, you know, your personal values and things like that. On the flip side, the worst advice was in a job interview where it wasn't so much as advice as just a comment. I was going to a job interview. I had 2 job interviews. One was with a private company to be a structural engineer, and I hate structures, so thank God I didn't get that job. Well, I did get it, but I didn't take it. And the next day I was going for the job that I've got now with the government, and the man at the structural engineering company said to me, oh, if I saw someone who worked for the government on their resume, I wouldn't look at it. And I thought, oh no, I'm a career-limiting move, no one's going to hire me after the government. But at the end of the day, you've got to bring your whole self to work. I didn't want to work in structures. They chop trees down, they clear all this land, and they just put structures up. Whereas I got a job now where I can, you know, kind of help the environment where I can. So, and that's, you know, a personal value of mine. I like to help the environment and help people and communities. So, yeah, bring your whole self to work and, yeah.
I actually just remembered some advice that I had from a teacher here, and it was about proofreading. And I used to always ask my dad to proofread all my assignments. And I remember he said something one day like, oh, I can't wait for the day that I don't have to proofread your stuff anymore. He still does right now. When it comes to applications, I work for the government, so it's not just a one-page resume that you have to submit, it's multiple pages. So, you know, always ask for help. Whether it's your parents, or your friends, colleagues, it's okay to ask for help for little things like proofreading, because we all have to help each other get up in life, I think. So that was something that I was told when I was actually in my career counsellor's office back in year 12 here. So,
I think something that's really freely said around my workplace is just to get in, give it a go, like just get in and have a crack, because the worst thing that can happen is that you fail and you learn something from it, and the best thing that you can do is succeed. So I think a big thing is just giving lots of things just a go, whether it's something that you're confident in or whether it's something that you're a little bit hesitant to try. Just get in and give it a go and you'll probably succeed.
I was just going to say that I feel like quote, I don't know, it's pretty common, but it's literally like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And I feel like it really sits in with advice I got from my sister, who said, like, if your manager doesn't know you're unhappy, how are they going to change it? So, like, I got like good and bad advice from a manager. I tried letting her know that I wasn't like upset, like I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and she told me if I don't like what I'm doing, I should just put my resignation in and leave. And I was quite, like, she caught me quite off guard, and I just said, well, no, I'm not leaving. Like, that's really unfair. So it was just like, yeah, like, that situation made me realise that she didn't know that I was upset, and she just, like, proved that I didn't want to be there. It was just, like, this moment. And so 2 in 1.
I think the best advice, as I said before, that I've ever been given was by my husband when I was despairing. I was a mum. I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest of my life beyond mumming. And he said, just start. And even at this level, when you're deciding on what you want to do, even if you don't know what you want to do, it doesn't matter. Because most likely, when you hit your mid-50s, you won't be doing what you've chosen when you left school anyway. The wonderful thing about just starting is that it leads you down wonderful paths that you would never have gone down before. If you don't like what you're doing, you can change it. But on that pathway, before you change it, you've met wonderful people, you've come across fantastic opportunities, you've created new hobbies and opportunities. So there is no right way to do this. And that was the pressure that I felt when I was at school 40 years ago, was that there was only one right way. You know, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a nurse, you're an engineer, essentially. But there is no right way, and there's no such thing as a mistake. It's just a pathway of learning, an opportunity where you meet wonderful people and you make new friends, and then that takes you down another path. So there's no right way. And just start.
We've talked a bit about the world of work. The people sitting in front of us at the moment, year 10, year 12, both getting ready for some fairly important decisions. Not necessarily definitive, because we've learned that actually there are lots of pivot points in people's lives. Your subjects are important, you know, your grades are obviously important, but I'm interested in this term called soft skills. I find the term, frankly, quite sexist, but nevertheless, increasingly the reports are indicating that soft skills, and those are interpersonal skills, the ability to show connectedness to community, the ability to show that you care about someone other than yourself, the ability to be part of a team, that increasingly universities and also employers are looking for those things. And that's obviously really important information for these girls, but it's also really important, particularly if you're not, you know, the A+ student, to know that these other talents are valued in the workplace. I'm interested in, as an employer, if anyone is in that role, I'm interested in what you look for in a resume to actually evaluate someone's soft skills, or what you look for in an application.
I'm actually got 2 jobs out there at the moment on ethical jobs on Seek and LinkedIn and all the rest. And I think, I mean, it would vary. You know, what Kirsten will put on her resume and what I would put on my resume would vary because it's based on our experiences. And that also means that if you haven't got anything to put on there, that's what I'm going to be looking at. Like, what have you been doing and where have you acquired some of these skills? Are you working at Macca's? Great. Are you volunteering for an organisation? Amazing. Have you been contributing to the Student Representative Council for the last 3 years at school? Cool. Tell me about the projects that you worked on. Going to this school gives you so many opportunities to learn how to do so many of those skills that you will use in a workplace. And it's not just, I think sometimes, particularly when we get to year 12, or when we're in year 10 and we're trying to decide what subjects we're going to do for year 11 and year 12, or whether we take on leadership positions or not, we think that possibly we won't because we want to focus on our academics. You can learn so much from, you know, having a bake sale to initiating a new online startup or something like that. All those skills are where you gain those skills. So that's what I'm looking for in a resume. I'm looking for, I'll actually ask what your values are. I'll make sure that you've had experience somewhere. I want to make sure that you've got good references. And the way that you'll get good references is by working in a workplace and formalising a professional relationship with someone, or by doing an internship somewhere that might not be paid, but you're exploring different options and you're showcasing your skills. So they're the tips that I would be, is displaying those experiences that you've had. Be unafraid to let a little bit of you in, because I do believe that work is all-encompassing. You know, you spend so much time there, you want to be doing something that you love. I want to be creating a workplace where it's good people, and so I need good people to join my other good people that are on board as well. So I hope that kind of answers that question.
I've never been like an A+ student, and when I tutored university students, they'd always think that I was like a straight 7 student, and I was like, no, not at all. I think it's really important. A lot of people who want to go into science and engineering think that they have to do all the science subjects and all the math subjects while they're at school. But it's so important to keep those humanities in there, because I mean, I did accounting, ancient history and physics as my electives, and people would always be like, what are you doing? But it's really important to keep that, because if you can't communicate in a science, in an engineering field, if you can't communicate a technical problem to someone who's not technical, you know, in terms of if they need to fix it with money, or that there's some sort of stakeholder in it, they're not going to be able to understand you unless you're a good communicator and you have that background in the humanities. Yeah. And I always think of this, a question I got asked one time, or it was an article. When you get asked what you do, instead of saying your career, you know, talk about your hobbies. So if someone asks me what I do, I say, oh, I paint on the weekends. And it really comes out of left field. They go, oh, that's not what I was expecting.
Mm.
Yeah.
We might wrap up the formal panel component and hand over to you to ask some questions. So I just remind you that we have got people sitting in front of us from the area of law, the area of design, the area of politics, media, engineering, real estate, science, and leadership. A really broad field. And I'm wondering if you have any questions. So I'll give you 2 minutes. In the meantime, I'll come down to the audience. I'll try not to fall over, as I want to do, being uncoordinated, which is one of the reasons I could not be a spy. I think I wouldn't really have the... Come down, you need to think of some questions. Could I ask you, please, to come back to attention? Thank you for that. All right, Claire.
I just have a question, like a general question. For anybody that had a definitive goal for what they wanted to do, when they finished school, somebody that actually knew what they wanted to do. I know I struggle with being motivated. I was just wondering if you have any motivation tips, how to stay on track with your goal.
Thank you, Claire.
Do you know what you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
I want to be a journalist.
Okay, well then,
Why didn't you chair this panel? Why didn't you chair this panel?
You didn't ask me to.
That's true.
I think start with small sort of things, making sure that you can get through, getting into uni, getting into the areas that you want to be in, get into the classes that you want to be in a good routine. I think making sure you have a good routine during the week of study, friends, family. I think those outside ones will really impact how you're enjoying uni and stuff. And I think for me it was just because I knew that I wanted to be in design, I just tried everything within the design space to really know what I wanted to do in specifics. So for journalism, I guess really do your side projects and study your own things in the different areas and see which one that you really draw attention to more. And yeah, just keep it quite diverse in that area, and yeah, just start with
subjects and just completing them, and I think that was for me.
I joined Toastmasters, and that's pretty fun for like, I don't know what journalists do, but you know, I'm not afraid of public speaking, but I find it hard to come up with questions on the spot really quickly, and I'm not a quick thinker, so joining outside things like that, if that gives you motivation, I find other people, I feed off other people, so yeah.
I think another thing is also while you're studying, actually doing work experience in the space that you're interested in, because the studying will only get you so far. You know, you'll have to go home, it'll be, you know, a lot of reading I would expect in journalism, you know, a lot of writing, things like that. And whilst that might be great, you might love the other aspects of journalism that aren't necessarily correlated in the studying aspect. So putting yourself in those practical experiences will really drive you and motivate you to get to that end goal and finish your studying.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, considering I work with journalists every single day. And it's one of those things that I speak to journalists and they don't know how to communicate with me. They don't know what question to ask. They just have no concept of what the topic is in front of them, because as you're probably aware, the industry is getting smaller. And so unfortunately they've got multiple stories on the go at any one time. So start reading the paper, start watching the news, you know, with your family. That's the only way you're going to know what it's going to be like, and it's going to motivate yourself to keep going.
Just for those in the audience, Claire just told me that those were all the things that I said. So not a ringing endorsement.
Can I just, sorry, to be quick, because I would love then all of you to do this. So Claire, are you able to just grab the mic there? Why do you want to be a journalist?
Because I like public speaking. Like I like talking in front of people, like not necessarily sharing knowledge, but just like sharing, like sharing things.
And why is sharing things important to you?
I don't know, I just really like the idea of like talking in front of people and sharing things to other people. I don't know why, it just appeals to me.
Yeah, cool. And sharing stories, is it story that's important to you, or what is it that's important to you? Tell me more about that.
I don't know, it's just kind of the stories. I think that people, I don't really know how to explain it. Like I know it in my head, but it's
no, you're doing really well. Keep going.
It's just like the idea of sharing like information to people that might not necessarily like get it firsthand. Do you know what I mean?
That's what you need to write down. So that's like what I'm trying to ask you is why it's really important to you, because that's your core motivator. Yeah. Your core motivator is that thing of why you're doing it. So if story is something that's really important to you and being able to share those messages, you need to write that sentence down and then dig a little bit deeper on it. And the reason why this is really important, and I'd love you to do it with your best friend tonight, is because then you'll find out what subjects you want to do, or when you're finding it hard to make a decision, you come back to that why. And being able to share stories and being able to allow people to understand things, journalism isn't the only way you can do that. Yeah. So many different avenues that you could find, and you can always come back to that, and that is a key part to it as well.
My question is just sort of, what was the hardest part of getting from where you were when you graduated to where you are now education-wise, and how did you overcome that?
Assignments. University assignments are certainly the hardest thing to get through, at least in engineering. I'm not sure. You might get some agreements down group assignments. Group assignments, yeah. I mean, you are going to have to do the work, and but that's something that you know going into it. If that's what you're passionate about, you need to do the work, and not every assignment is going to be totally appealing to you, or not every task that you're asked to do, or whether it be in university or afterwards, is going to be totally appealing to you. But you need to remember why you want to do it, and keep that in the back of your mind when you push through those kind of harder tasks.
So I know you guys are from a lot of different sort of industries. I know that we've sort of been told, and I remember from a previous conversation, that certain industries are a lot harder and there's a lot less opportunities and jobs than others. So I'm just wondering, would you recommend kind of avoiding it or looking at something different, or just trying to pursue it and do our best?
There's room for work experience. You just have to keep grinding. I left here wanting to be an event planner and did a small internship and realised I don't want to be the one planning the events, I want to be the one going to them. That's how I came to realise I didn't want to be an event planner. There's also no jobs in that either. But there's not a lot of jobs in media either, but I started as an admin assistant with the police because I worked out that's who I wanted to work for. And so it took me 2 years to get my role where I am now, just doing admin. So it's getting into the industry, whether it's unpaid or paid, hopefully paid by the time you finish your studies. And also in your part-time jobs, figuring out what avenue in that part-time job is actually where you might be studying. And you reach out to your head offices and stuff like that. You know, if you're interested in marketing, but you're in a retail store, reach out to the head office, you know, trying to find those different pathways because that's what's different on your resume by the end of it.
The best thing I can say to you is never shut a door because you don't think that you're going to make it in that area. If you want it, you can get it. Don't shut a door, darling. Keep on fighting through.
I was just gonna, my piece of advice I gave one earlier, sometimes advice can be the best and the worst all in the same one. And I remember bawling my eyes out. I'm a very emotional person. In my dance school, in the back change room, and like thinking no one knew I was there. My dance teacher came in. There was so much shame. I was like cuddled in a ball, and I was crying. And I was so lost. And she just said to me, "Belle, it's not always the best, but it's the ones that stick at it that make it." And so if you're determined and you stick at it, you can push through, and there has to be someone working in it, so why not it be you?
Yeah.
Hi, my question is just wondering, how do you manage to balance a communal life and not risking overextending yourself or burning out?
Oh my goodness.
Saying no. People seem to think I'm really busy, but I don't feel like I'm busy. But you've got to find what for you helps you switch off. And you've also, and it's hard because sometimes we get so busy that we can't sit back and reflect on how we're feeling, how we're going in life, and having that check-in with ourselves. So it is really hard to balance. I don't know if there's a straight answer to that, but yeah, knowing when to say no. You can't take, and it happens a lot with our personal relationships, I think, more than anything. You know, we have these heaps of friends and we love them and we just want to see them all the time, but sometimes we just want to sit at home and cuddle up on the couch and do nothing, and that's okay.
Can I just add to that? In terms of work-life balance, because I work in real estate and I go to the trouble of backing up a truck of $50,000 worth of furniture for every home that I sell, opening it on Saturdays, I choose not to take Sunday off because that's when people buy homes, and I'm not going to all the trouble of creating all the emotion and competition on Saturday to say to the buyers, "Oh no, I don't work on Sundays, I'll talk to you on Monday." So I sort of essentially don't have any work-life balance. I'm very grateful that my hobby is my work and my work is my hobby. My husband and I talk about real estate all the time. We are ranters, we are passionate about everything that we do. There are times when I say, can you stop doing that comparative market analysis and can we watch this Netflix show? But look, I think I've had meltdowns where it's like I can't do one more thing, particularly when people say, "Oh, I've heard about you and I'd like you to list my house next week," and I've already got 3 trucks coming on Monday. The way that I've achieved the balance is that I block out time. I go to the calendar at the beginning of the year and I go, this is when I'm going to have a holiday. I'm going to have, back when my boys were in school, I'm going to have the school holidays. I'm going to find someone who can cover for me, even though it's my own business. So blocking out time so that you've got time to rest and recover. And it's funny, once you go on holidays, when you're all fired up with your work, as soon as you've had a little bit of a rest, you find your brain is so much more creative once you've had that rest, and all these wonderful things come to you that wouldn't have happened if you were just, working 7 days a week. So my advice is you block out the time.
The best thing is to say that word no. I remember once early on in my career, my staff had me working 3 months straight without a day off. So working nights, every weekend. By the end of it, I called Anthony. I said I had 2 men working in my office. I called Anthony into my office and just burst into tears and said, "You've just got to give me time." And his answer to me was, "Well, counsellor, can you say no?" So it took a lot of time for me to realise that I just can't, 2 young kids at the time, can't continue the hours that I was doing. So now I make sure at least I have 1 weekend off a month, and that is a no-go zone. No one's allowed to book an appointment.
And we might move on to the next question.
So in regards with work experience, I know it can take a lot of time and effort, especially when you're not getting paid for it. When you're in uni and you also have a job and you want to do work experience, is that really worth it for your future? Does it do a big difference for it?
I was just going to say yes, definitely, because you'll find you learn so much in that space. And if you're not if you're not getting value from them as well, then that might not be for you, and you need to find another place to do your internship or do your voluntary work. But when someone comes into my office and they're volunteering their time, Maddie Riddle just did some voluntary work for me, and she is incredible. And Maddie and both Jess Fawkes as well. They've been doing such great work for me, but my role is to what else can I do to add value? I want to make sure I'm adding value to you, so there should be reciprocated value. So it's definitely worth your time if you're in an environment like that, and if you're not, then move on to another one.
I was just going to say, most of you are probably looking at uni degrees that are, 3 or 4 years. It doesn't have to be that short. I went in for a 3-year degree, changed unis after my first year. I think I graduated after 4.5 years. But in that time, I worked full-time and got experience so that I actually ended up being above the people I graduated with because I had life experience. So just take your time, and if you are studying, if you find a particular subject really hard or you keep failing or whatever, just drop back to 1 or 2 subjects. Just focus on it because you've got all the time in the world. An extra year is really not going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, I might just add on to what Stacey said. I went down to part-time uni to make sure that I could get work experience, because within design, the thought of using uni assignments was horrendous. I just didn't want to present that sort of work to potential employers, because I wasn't proud of that work. I did it to be able to finish the subjects, and to an extent, yeah, I did enjoy it, but I really wanted to have working for real clients, doing places that you can go to and be yep, I did those menus, and just had something I was really proud of. So yeah, I did do unpaid work for a really long time, but it really paid off.
Okay, we might need to just move on to the next question.
Hi, nervous question. So I was just wondering, how many women, Latina women like myself, Asian women, Aboriginal women of colour are there in your field, specifically in the leadership and business and real estate sector, because that's what I'm interested in. What is the stereotype around women of colour? How easy or hard is it to find a job in that kind of sector for women of colour? Because I want to know if it's as bad as I think it is, or if it's actually quite good.
Yeah, I think as we just brought up before, it's changing, and so workplaces are looking for diversity, and so they want women of colour, and they want different perspectives and different acknowledgements, because we are now such a huge society that we have to serve that as well. So I want to know your insights as to how things work, and don't be fearful of it. Just embrace it and get into it and represent.
We might just move on to our final question for the day, and I'll ask these ladies to make contact with the panel individually because we are wrapping up.
I was actually wondering when it came to choosing your universities and the degrees you wanted to do, even if it didn't end up in the jobs that you went into, did you base that on hobbies or friends going to the universities and degrees and stuff, or how did you decide?
I think the main part when choosing a university is looking at what each university has to offer in terms of the way that they run their degrees. I know that when I looked at going to Bond, they place such a big part of their law degree specifically is the practical aspect of it. Whereas other competing unis like Griffith and QUT place a lot more importance on the theoretical aspect, and that to me wasn't so important. So I think looking at the way that each university and each degree differs, is really important when making that choice.
I hadn't been to UQ, so I just put Q. I had been to QT, so in school, so I was like, oh, I've been to QT, I'll just put that down. I didn't know how to get to UQ, so.
I'd just like to add, this isn't my own personal experience because it was such a long time ago, but my eldest son, he chose his medical institution for his medical degree based on the graduates who were most favourably employed by the doctors that he knew, so reputation. So maybe you could research, you know, what sort of reputation the graduates have, and you know whether, for example, in medicine, the uni that my boy chose, the graduates had a lot more practical experience, so the specialists liked working with them because they were actually quite capable, as opposed to the ones that were more theoretical. So yeah, reputation.
I didn't have much choice because, as I said, I wanted to do agricultural science. I did change because of my bad advice my brothers gave me. But there was only two real universities that I was looking at, which was Gatton and the University of New England in Armidale. Because my brothers went to Gatton, I went down to the University of New England. But if you ask my Year 12 daughter, please don't take this advice, anyone. Piper is choosing her university of what the university looks like.
We might wrap it up there. Girls, thank you for your questions. Can I get you please to join me in thanking Isabel, Adele,